Hey, 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 welcome. Good afternoon, Fargo, on this, I don't know what you'd call it, a semi cloudy day, but I'll tell you what, it was 66 degrees when I walked out of the house today, and it doesn't seem like it's warmed up at all. Uh, to me, it feels like summer's over, and I hope that we get the July where it's really hot and it seems like my grass is never going to grow again and I barely want to go outside. But it. The one thing about this climate living here is that you notice the changes in weather, and I've just come to expect right about this time it seems like it's a little colder in the morning. You get that chill. Now you see I'm wearing a long sleeve shirt on today. It's also cold in the studio. I don't know what's going on here, but anyway, well, we're gonna have a pretty interesting show. If you can see me online, I've got on my Vikings colors, which means that we're gonna do a little Viking talk, and this is gonna be my time to wax poetic about former past Viking greats and what's coming up for the future of the Vikings and what I see. And of course, I'm sure some of you guys think that I'm going to say, "Oh, the Vikings are going to go to the Super Bowl." Um, Depending on J.J. McCarthy, I think they got a shot. The other thing I'm going to cover today is, as you know, they passed the big, beautiful bill. Uh, I don't know if it's aptly named, but I'll tell you, there's some things that I just look at and I'm dumbfounded. I'm dumbfounded why there's no uproar. There's no, I mean, and I'm not dumbfounded because I want to talk about something. Just this weekend, I was with my frat brothers the Owl Legacy event, um, and it occurred to me that for 3 days I didn't watch any new, and I didn't watch any TV. Um, wasn't really on social media where I paid attention to anything. But immediately on Sunday, as we're driving home and I'm getting back in the work mode, um, when I got back to my office and I thought about today's show, I thought, man, I'm tired of hearing anything that has to do with Donald Trump or this administration. I am actually fatigued on Trump, and it's funny because I really think that that's what um, people are hoping for. That we just go. You know what? I've had enough. I'm not going to listen. I'm not going to pay attention, and that's a very dangerous position to take because when we stop paying attention, that gives people um, that gives them permission to do even more of the stuff they've been doing. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the big beautiful bill, but not a whole lot. But I just want to know: are you guys fatigued with the political stage? Are you finally over everything we're hearing? And for me, I just want to enjoy life. I got to see Christian and Kayla and Jackson and Maya and got to hang out for a little bit. And I just enjoyed being with my family. And then here Sunday comes, and I got to think about this show and what I want to talk about. And immediately I get on the internet and I'm just bombarded. And of course, it's like, man, where's the good news? Where's the positivity that we're used to? And at least I'm used to. Where's the stuff nowadays that you can hang your hat on? And you almost got to dig to find it. And the funny thing is, you could usually find it on TikTok or Instagram and sometimes on Facebook. But it seems like social media has now become our getaway, or my getaway anyway, where I can still see people doing great stuff. There was this it was a video, and this little guy, he goes up to this house and he says, "Hey, do you have anything I can do? I want to take my girlfriend out." And the guy couldn't have been more than 10 or 12, but it was interesting because the guy was like, "You know what? I don't even care if I don't have anything to do. I'm going to find something for this kid to do." And the guy had the young man cut his grass and he handed him $100 bill. Now, I pay $35 to get my lawn lawn cut, but just to see this play out, and I don't think it was a skit, which is also something you got to guard against. Is what's real and what's fiction. But I just thought, why don't we see more of that? Why are we so focused on so much negative stuff that goes on? And in other countries, it's not like this. When I go to Mexico, they're not overly concerned with what their government is doing. I'm sure they have their issues, but it seems like people outside the United States are living better, more positive lives than we are. And if you've been on a trip recently or anything like that, I'd like to hear your thoughts on it. Or maybe I'm just off. I don't know. But I can tell you it really bugged me that I'm tired of all the news talk. I'm tired of all the fatigue and the negative. I'm tired and fatigued over all the negativity. It's like I've had enough. And so I said, you know what? I'm just not gonna I'm not gonna turn my phone to Facebook, Instagram, or TikTok. That lasted about 4 hours. Of course, because a few friends of mine, they're sending me videos and stuff like that. But my point I'm making is that we can't get too fatigued to make sure that we're holding people accountable. We can't forget that this is our future playing out in real time. But before we get to all that, I want to say I went on and I listened to all the prognosticators about what the Vikings are going to do this year, and I'm sorry, I'm gonna have to do I'm not even gonna do the bandwagon thing, but I have the Vikings on at least 13 wins this year. That's my prediction. I think the Vikings will win 13 games this year. Now, if you go down the schedule, you might say, well, where do you get 13 wins from? Well, think about it. We're bringing back a defense, and we've added to the defense in a significant way. And I want you guys to remember what happened when Philadelphia came out and they punched Kansas City in the mouth. It was interesting to see how they shut Patrick Mahomes down. And then they went to work with a running game and passed off of that. Now, I think that the Vikings, in shoring up their defense, have put themselves in the position to be one of the better, if not one of the top defenses in the league, which for me, that alone is going to win you some games. That alone puts you on at least an 8-game win. So if I said I think that they can win 13, and we play the Bears twice, we play the Packers twice, which, by the way, I think the Packers are going to regress, and we also play Detroit. Now, as much as I thought Detroit was having head and shoulders above everybody last year, I don't think they're coached well. And I say that in this vein. When it comes to the big games, Dan Campbell, he makes the decisions that leave you going, they're head scratchers. Now, I think that it's going to be a Vikings-Lions race simply because the Lions are getting a lot of good players back. I don't know if you guys know, but they had practically half their roster gone, and they still went on a pretty good run. But I also think the NFL is a little bit weaker than it has been in the past. I mean that you have your top-tier teams, and then you have everybody else. And everybody else is scrambling just to try to do what they can do. So with that, we're off and running. So, big game James already in my ear about going against. So when I come back, big game James and I are going to talk a little bit Viking football. I want to get his take on things. This is Jon Adams for Talk of the Town. If you want to call in, the phone number is 701-293-9000. Hey, welcome back to Talking to Town with Jon Adams. We're going to talk a little Vikings football because, hey, why not? I've got the Vikings on 13 wins this year, James. I honestly think that they can tear through the Central Division and looking at their what do you call it, the out of division rivals. I think that there are going to be some wins that they can pick up there. So the first thing we have to address is the quarterback. Now, for me, I think that having J.J. McCarthy sit, well, he didn't sit because he wanted to. He sit because he had to. But, you know, when you get behind, when a rookie quarterback is able to sit and learn and be there with the team and pick the quarterback's brain in real time, they say that Sam Darnold was a pretty good teacher, you know, and that J.J. McCarthy learned a lot of stuff from him. And so I think that based on what I saw, I think the Vikings are going to be good. So let's just walk through their schedule first, and we're going to do this kind of quickly, and you guys see if you're with me on this. So the season starts Friday, August 22nd. They play, what do you call it, Tennessee, right? And I don't care what anybody says. I think that that's a win. Then if you go down, you look at the Cincinnati Bengals. Now, what I do is I throw the toss-ups into one separate column, not win or loss, but it's a toss-up. Okay, so we got one win on the board. Philadelphia Eagles. Sorry, that's going to be a loss. I don't see that the Vikings have the firepower, but it's a new season. You know, a lot of teams change. You know, but that's going to be the first real test for the Minnesota Vikings. So we got to go with the Eagles on that one. Then you have the Los Angeles Chargers. I think that's a win all day long. I don't think the Chargers have the firepower, or I don't think that they can handle Minnesota's defense. Then we go down to the Detroit Lions in Ford Field. I gotta say that that's a loss. I don't see them beating Detroit. Detroit has had our number the past couple of years. Then they play the Ravens. To me, the Ravens are a toss-up. James, are you keeping track of this? So
am I supposed to be?
Well, right now I got them 2-2-2. So no, you're not supposed to be, but I'm just saying. So then the
if we're going to be 13-4, something's not adding up here through 6 games.
We're about to go on a run here. Chicago Bears a win. Green Bay a win. All right. Seattle a win. We're at 5 already, James. Then they play the Commanders. That's a win. All right?
Are we there or we host them?
We are hosting them.
Okay.
Dallas Cowboys a win. New York Giants a win. We're at 8 wins, James. All right. Then we have the Detroit Lions at home. I'm putting that in the toss-up category. And then we have the Green Bay Packers, which is a win. So that's 9, right? I think my numbers are correct. So I put him on 9 wins, but now we look at these toss-up games, right? So now if we go back, what is this? All right. So now if we go back and we look at these toss-up teams, Cincinnati, Cincinnati is a wild card. I mean, we play them tough every year. I'm not sold on Joe Burrow. What do you think, James? You think that it's going to be a toss-up, or you think Cincinnati's got the firepower to win?
I think they're in a little bit of turmoil at this point. The defense, they needed to rely on some guys in the draft, and their first-round pick is yet to sign still, a defensive lineman out of Texas A&M, I believe 16th overall, if I remember correctly. That's going to be a huge question mark for them because this is a team, whether they get extensions done or not with the receiving core, Cincinnati can put up 34, 35 points a game. If they don't have anybody on defense, they're going to give up 40, and they're going to go, 8-9 like they did last year. So I'd be confident this year with the Vikings and the firepower they have on both ends to win against the Bengals, even though if I remember correctly, that was 2 years ago that we lost in Cincinnati, wasn't it? It was 2 years ago.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that's a completely different roster construction even than they have now. So
then the other one I had, Seattle is a win. So we're at 11 wins right now. And so the only other toss-ups, what was the other toss-up? Detroit, I think I had as a toss-up at home, you know? And Detroit is not the same Detroit. Now, they're getting some starters back, but at the same time, that offense was through the roof. It was dynamic. It had a lot of energy to it. The defense, they kind of got exposed in the playoffs. You know what I'm saying? It seems to me that if McCarthy's a better decision maker than Darnold and he's more mobile, I think that presents some problems that Detroit hadn't seen last year. So, but it's hard to say the rookie can do that. Now at home, I think they have the advantage just because they're at home. So now, I think I have 13 wins there. But let's think about what the Vikings did for the offseason. First, let's start with the quarterback. So they jettisoned Sam Darnold, which I think was a pretty good move. You know, I think we saw the ceiling on Darnold, but at the same time, I'm a little upset because if they were going to make the offensive line moves that they made, I would have liked to see them keep Darnold, but they couldn't have kept him and do what they did. But I get it, but I think Darnold would have been even better with this revamped offensive line. Some are calling it a top 5 offensive line, which I think is funny because who knows? You know, everything changes. But so then we go to running back, and Aaron Jones. As much as I liked Aaron Jones, he's got some wear and tear on him. But the kid they picked up out of San Francisco, he is a boomer, and he runs hard. He runs a lot like Aaron Jones. We got to see him. Was it last year? Yeah, I think we got to see him last year. Did they play? Well, whether they played them or not, I remember seeing this kid. He's dynamic. He's big. He's fast. He's a guy that when they run the zone blocking scheme or anything of that type, he's shifty and then he's downhill. And I like that because you have to have a tough running game, and you certainly have to have more than one running back in this day and age. The running back position has actually become more important. Now we see the importance when we see what happened when Saquon Barkley went to the Eagles. Their offense was on a different wavelength, and it showed all through the season, and it certainly showed up in the playoffs and eventually the championship. Do we really need to cover the wide receiver room? Because I think the addition of Rondell Moore is a sleeper pick. And
I'm hopeful for it. I think he's a guy that can add dynamics specifically to special teams. I loved him when he was at Purdue in college. He's a little bit undersized. He's a guy that's got some speed, but for whatever reason, whether it was injuries, it was personnel, it never fully clicked when he was with the Cardinals.
I think you could put that on the quarterback. You know, I think his style of play doesn't lend itself to a guy he's going to be a possession receiver. You're going to get those gimmick plays, you know, the reverses, the tunnel screens, the stuff like that. But what I like is that he reminds me of Percy Harvin in that he's really strong and he's dynamic like that. Now, I don't know if he's as fast or shifty as Percy Harvin, but I see them using him in that type of role, although I don't think they'll ever put him in the backfield like they did with Percy Harvin. But then you look at tight ends. This is where I'm kind of like, you know, is T.J. Hawkinson really going to be able to come back and be what he was? But at the same time, with the receiver room being what it is, the additions that they've made, he should get a lot more touches and a lot more looks. So I think that overall the Vikings have shored up areas that weren't necessarily weak, but they just made them better. But probably the biggest improvement that I see is to the offensive line. And I've said for years that part of the reason Viking quarterbacks haven't fared so well is because there's so much push up the middle. And you saw it with Sam Darnold. You know, I mean, when he got pushed up the middle, he held on to the ball. It was easy to disrupt what we had going on. But the addition of the center, Kelly, and is it Will Freeze? He's a guard. and then they drafted Donovan Jackson, which looking at him at Ohio State, he's a masher. He's a road grader, and I can't help but think of Corey Stringer, God rest his soul. He reminds me of that type of guy, just big and massive, but he's a guard. So I think that they put all the right pieces in place on offense. Where I think that if JJ, and I hate the term, but if he could be a game manager and stay healthy, I think they have a good chance to go a long ways. I'm not saying Super Bowl, but we haven't had a quarterback like this. He's good with his feet. According to the Vikings, he can make all the throws. Right? That's what we're hearing out of training camp. That he's won the Super Bowl in training camp. But either way, people are pretty excited. I like what Justin Jefferson had to say that he's got a live arm, and he puts the ball where it needs to be. And you kind of gauge it. Is this a guy trying to speak life into his semi-rookie quarterback, or is he bought all in? Now, I've gotten on the internet and I've seen him throw, and the ball jumps a little, but who knows? You don't really know until you get in competition and the field speed kicks in. But I also like the fact that they picked up Max Brosmer. If you guys don't remember, Max Brosmer started in New Hampshire, ended up at the University of Minnesota, and I thought he was held back a little bit by PJ Fleck. There, did you see any of the games, James?
I watch the Gophers pretty religiously.
Is that right?
If I'm not at a Dragons game or in the Fargo Dome with the Bison, it's the Gophers as well. I mean, the Gophers, they run a more conservative kind of power run style of offense. Brosmer was a graduate transfer quarterback. It was a tough spot to be in, just a one-off type of setting, because PJ, the way that he operates, in my opinion, is a guy that you need 3-4 years with the program to be given the keys to the car, and Brosmer was a guy that had to come in on short notice, and I thought he was incredibly efficient in a pretty darn complex offense overall when it comes to 3, 4, 5 yards at a time, whether it's through the air or on the ground, trying to put together a drive and score some points.
As well as, did you notice that towards the end of the year, he did get the reins a little more?
Looked like he was calling his own audibles, like kind of in that Wisconsin game into the bowl game.
Yes. For those of you guys that don't know, if you've lived in the Minnesota Golden Gopher football abyss, to see what's happening, and I'm taking a detour because it's important to note, to see what's happening in Minnesota is that little by little, people are buying into PJ Fleck, and it's no longer the roll the boat that they're buying into. He's getting some pretty good recruits. He's actually got a couple 4-stars. I don't know if he's got any 5-stars, but some pretty impressive recruits coming in. And so I like the trajectory. It's going to come down to, once again, NIL, because let's face it, if teams out here are spending $30 million to buy a football team, Ohio State, and a national championship, I don't know that the Minnesota scene is ever going to be ready to shell out that type of money for quality football. But like the Bison, I think you can recruit yourself into a dynamic program. Big Game James says that's an excellent place to pay the bills. So we're going to go to break. When we come back, we're going to talk a little more Viking football. We're going to touch on the Bison, and then we're going to get into the big, beautiful bill. This is Jon Adams for Talk of the Town. If you want to call in, the phone number is 701-293-9000. Hey, welcome back to Talk of the Town with Jon Adams. I'm here. We've been talking all things Viking football, and so with that, we talked about the offense, we talked about the quarterback, we talked about the receivers. Now let's go to defense. Now, I am a Brian Flores junkie. I like the fact that he game plans for who he's playing. You know, a lot of teams say, well, we run this defense, we run that defense. And with Brian Flores, to a quarterback or a coach that you listen to, a lot of them say the interesting thing about the Flores style of coaching is that you never know what you're going to get in terms of what he does. I mean, he's blitz heavy. He's a man junkie, meaning that he's going to put his cornerbacks on an island. He's going to scheme it up. He's going to have linemen drop into coverage. He's going to have linemen cover backs out of the backfield. A lot of different things, and you just never know. And it's that unpredictability that makes him such a great coordinator. But more than that, he seems to get and James, you can chime in here if you want. He seems to get a lot out of the players. And the players like playing. Now, I've never liked the idea of a player's coach, because players can turn on you, And just as much as they love you, they're kind of like kids. Just as much as they love you, they cannot love you at a moment's notice, depending on how they're feeling. But I just like the fact that we have an aggressive D coordinator. And I think that bodes well for us. But there were a couple key additions that they added, and one was Hargrave. Hargrave was he from Washington or San Francisco? I know they got the guy from San Francisco, and then who's the other guy? Big D lineman. Can't think of it off the top of my head, but so with the addition of these defensive linemen, I think they've automatically vaulted themselves into the conversation. Now, as much as I like Harrison Phillips, Harrison Phillips had some lateral movement issues. Okay, not so with the guys that we picked up in the offseason. So they shored up the defensive line, and then they got Isaiah Rodgers. I believe he was with the Eagles, and also Jeff Okudah. Now, I've never, and I don't know how you feel about him, but Jeff Okudah is kind of like an enigma to me because coming out of Ohio State, I thought he was going to be an all-pro, and he's kind of bounced around a little bit, but some different guys mature and they grow at different rates, but I think that they've done a lot of shoring up. Now their linebacker core is probably where they shine the most, between Yvonne Pace. And you got Van Ginkel on one end, and who's the other linebacker, James? Not Van Ginkel. God, I can't think of his name. I'm drawing a blank today, people. But I think that their defense, with what they've added, I honestly think that this Vikings team is going to make some noise. And I see a lot of the national pundits getting on, and they are also getting on board with this, except Colin. I think Colin Cowherd just has no love for J.J. McCarthy whatsoever. But what do they know? I mean, it's no different than when they do the draft. They got these guys out here, and Mel Kiper is the one that comes to mind mostly. Is that he's about 30% on picking winners since he's been known as the draft guru. But anyway, so you guys got any thoughts on the Viking season upcoming? Me, I'm pretty hopeful. I can't wait for Viking Fun Day Sunday, and get all that kicked off. Let's turn just a little bit to the Bison because why not? Why wouldn't we talk about the winningest program in FCS history in terms of national titles? Now, like the Vikings, the Bison have a question mark at quarterback, and I haven't heard a whole lot out of Bison camp. James, what do you know about the court? Do you see? Here's my thing about the young guy that's going to assume the helm. Now, my question is, is he a good passer? You know, can he make the throws? We know he can run, but a couple of years ago we had a quarterback. I forget his name, but he transferred. But he was more just an option style quarterback. He didn't have the greatest arm, but we made do with him. So it's like, all right, let's start with a quarterback. Let's face it, in Bison country, we're used to pro level talent. Now, you could say that tongue in cheek. I mean, we've had what, 4 quarterbacks that have gone to the NFL and seen some significant time, you know, and now with golly, Cam Miller going to the Raiders. Tom Brady is in love with Cam Miller. He likes his footwork, he likes his throwing, his toughness, and he's gone on, I don't want to call it promotional tour, but he's had some pretty positive things to say about Cam Miller. So with that, I think the Bison returned some pretty significant pieces, but the question is, can they all get on the same page? Now, I say that because they also graduated a few people. And so, I don't think there's going to be a significant drop-off because I can tell you one thing. Polasek, I just like the fact that he's gotten back to old school Bison football. That run-first mentality, that hard-nosed defense, that we're going to talk with our shoulder pads mentality. And it was really refreshing to see how they would, first of all, starting with the Colorado game, the way that they gave Colorado all that they wanted and then some, and then to follow it up with a pretty good regular season, and then to walk through all the way to the national championship. Now, they do have a lineman. I can't believe I'm drawing a blank on all these. James, every year it seems like they have a pro prospect coming on the offensive line, and that's no different. I think it's the center. Oh man, what is his name? Guys, you have to forgive me. I'm drawing a blank on all these things. I had it in my notes and I can't read through them. But anyway, I just see them retooling and reloading. Now, the loss of their star running back, didn't he go to Miami?
Yeah, he did. I'm drawing a blank on his name now. He's from Omaha.
Is it Johnson or Jackson?
Nope. It's Marty Brown.
Yeah. See, you got Jon Adams disease. You drew a blank too. But
Trent Fraley is the center you're talking about.
Yes. Yeah. So every year the Bison have a guy on the line that all of a sudden you're going to get the pro scouts looking at. But there's also some things that happened. Randy Hedberg retired. Now, he's considered the quarterback guru forever. And his work shows in the product, it shows on the field, it shows in the young man that he's developed. So that's the wild card that I'm like, hey, are we going to have somebody that can step into that role? I found it interesting. There was actually a rumor that Carson Wentz was going to come back and coach quarterbacks, but that was an April Fool's joke. But anyway, big game. James says we're up against the break. We may not get to the big, beautiful bill this week. I didn't know I had this much to say about the Vikings as well as the Bison. We come back, we'll talk a little more Bison football. And call in. I want to get your thoughts on what you think the Bison will be this year. Hey, welcome back to Talk of the Town with Jon Adams. It looks like we're going to shelve the big, beautiful bill for this week because I do want to talk Bison football, and I got my notes back up. You guys don't know this, but there's always a ton of notes that I'm looking through as I'm on the show, and it's funny because both computer screens went down, and I didn't have access to my information, but we're going to start at the top here again. Well, the Bison actually do have 19 returning starters, so they lost a little, but they didn't lose a lot, you know. And I believe for the first time, James and I were discussing this, that they have 7 incoming transfers. That means that they have 7 players that have played at other college football programs. It's interesting because the Bison have always built from within, but with the transfer portal and NIL. This is how you adapt as a school now. You know, you have to look at it, you have to say, okay, where can we fit some pieces in that might be able to plug and play right away? And so some notables, they did add a linebacker from Minnesota and a running back from Minnesota and a DB from James Madison, another running back, what is his name? DJ Scott. So, you know, they're doing what they got to do to shore it up. Notable returners, of course, you have Trey Lance. Wow. Yeah, that Trey Lance coming back. No, but you have Bryce Lance. And it's funny because I always thought of Bryce Lance as more of a possession receiver. But last year, there were a couple times where he showed off some speed that I didn't know he had. But his hands are elite. You have Logan Kopp returning. These guys, both of those guys were starters, and actually they're both preseason All-Americans. But they do return 19 players that played at least 200 snaps last season. So the big question, like I said, is going to be, can Cole Payton step in and do what needs to be done? You know, and so it's like, okay, this dude has only had 58 career passing attempts. Well, you know, you do get a lot of practice in preseason, in the spring ball. You know, they're throwing all the time, but it's different when you get in the game. And his backup, of course, is Nathan Hayes. There's really not much information out there about him, but all things point to Cole Payton taking over. They're going to have some weapons. You know, they got Bryce Lance, they got Roger Nelson. I hope that Roger comes back healthy. Chris Harris, of course. You know, the funny thing is, Chris Harris, this guy, he's ranked second on the team in receiving yards, you know? And he had flashes, but that part is up in the air now. You look at it, the offensive line, they're going to have to replace 3 starters, and I don't know if that's happened before where they had to replace so many guys on the line, but of all of the areas that you worry about on a football team, the Bison offensive line and defensive line, it just seems like they just plug and play and they bring guys in and they get it right. I think if anything, probably the biggest area that should be a concern is in the secondary. You know, I mean, we've got one kid, Jalen Crumby. He played cornerback and he was a freshman, and he was on the all-newcomer team for the Missouri Valley Conference. They have experienced at safety. They have two starters at cornerback, Jalen Duffy. It looks like, to me, can Tim Polasek get these guys to gel? You know, and it seems like at every position or every skill group, there's somewhere where the Bison are going to have to step up. You know, their defensive line, they're going to have some newcomers there. They're going to have newcomers on the offensive line. So I don't know if I should say this is uncharted territory, but it certainly is going to be interesting how the Bison come along. I think the saving grace is they play in the Missouri Valley, and the Missouri Valley is like the NCC. It's the best conference in the FCS. So you're going to get tested, and those tests, regardless of who you're playing, they're going to show you who you are in a hurry. And I give the Bison coaches credit. They always know how to pivot. Especially, you watched last year, you look back, the second half, coaching eliteness. They always seem to make the right adjustments at halftime. Well, it's going to be a season-long adjustment when it comes to the Bison football. Whatever happens, I can't wait to get out there and tailgate and watch the Bison perform. And, of course, coming up, we're going to have the Dragons on here so we can talk Dragon football. But, listen, as much as I want to talk to big, beautiful Bill, I'm also fatigued on the federal government. So I'm glad that we have the Vikings NDSU conversation. I want to thank you guys for tuning in. This has been Jon Adams for Talk of the Town. Have a great week, and as always, stay black.